and with Jeff away, I'm joined by the editor of the World of Boxing, Ray Wheatley, and Ray Mark Johnson, a very exciting fighter and perhaps one of the best in the world at the moment.
Yeah, very strong champion, Mathew, and displayed great punching power and putting away Arthur Johnson in the first round. I think Mark Johnson's going on the bigger things.
And Jimmy Thunder, we both sort of cringed there a little bit, fighting Tim Witherspoon, perhaps a last chance for him to rekindle his career, but against Tim Witherspoon he's going to have his work cut out.
Yeah, I think he's got an uphill battle with Tim Witherspoon. Tim Witherspoon is still regarded as one of the biggest punching heavyweights in the world.
And the WBA obviously very keen for this Corday-Whittaker fight to go ahead, the fact that they have overturned the drug decision.
Yeah, very big fight with Corday 2-1 on favourite with the bookmakers.
So you like Corday in that fight?
I think he would go in there as a favourite, yeah. I agree with the bookmakers.
I guess, though, that as De La Hoya discovered that Whittaker is a cagey old fella.
Yeah, when he when he goes into the big fights, he normally prepares himself very well, Mathew, and I'm sure he'll come in great shape, but I think he's at the tail end of his career, and I think Cordy will just have too much. And De La Hoya,
of course, he wanted to fight, but his management was a little bit nervous, and you'd understand that with all that money on the line with him.
That's right, he's a great commodity, Oscar De La Hoya, and I suppose they just can't take any risk whatsoever with make sure he's in 100% shape.
Well, it's difficult to imagine a sadder story in sports than the tragic tale of Sonny Liston. Born into poverty, Liston found himself behind bars before he could vote, then was later considered the most unpopular heavyweight champion ever. And all he ever wanted was the public's respect and a normal place in society.
Violence was no stranger in the brutal world of Sonny Liston. By his 18th birthday, he had already done time for armed robbery and was busily adding more entries to his police block.
Sonny Liston was an enforcer, keep strikers out. He was hired by less than savory people and teamsters and whomsoever to enforce their ways, whims, and wills on dissidents. And he would crack eggs and heads with about the same frequency. Sonny Liston became from hard scrabble background. I think he was the next to last of 24 children born to an Arkansas sharecropper. And this was his way out. And he finally was put into jail. And it was there that a priest instructed him in the course of boxing. Got him into the ring, and Sonny Liston learned his skills, his trade, and everything else except his ferocity in prison rings. And Liston's left jab was a great part of his arsenal. He could take apart anybody. It was like hitting somebody in the head with a 2x4. It was the hardest left jab in the history of the heavyweight division.
One of the breakthrough bouts was against Cleveland Williams in Miami Beach Auditorium. I saw that fight. I was down there for the fight. And in the first round, Cleveland Williams had things pretty much his own way. And Sonny came out in the second round and turned things all around and took it away from him just on sheer will. There was no doubt that Sonny was the real article.
Even as he bludgeoned his way through the heavyweight division, Sonny had only a few allies. The majority of the frightened public held Liston at arm's length, ignorant of the alter ego of the man behind the wilting glare and cannonading left jab.
And Sonny was totally illiterate. One of the things that I admired about him, I remember him learning to write his name so that he could sign autographs. You know, another thing about Sonny that, I think that he had this great natural intelligence, the kind of intelligence that could never be measured. He started reciting these monologue records from people like Red Fox or Big Meat Markham or Mom's Mabley, the comedy records. He would start from the first track and go right through both sides of the LP as we'd be walking around. I mean, phenomenal memory. I mean, he was just a warm, good guy, and he believed in the American dream. He believed in up by the bootstraps and all of that business. He thought that title was going to open the doors for him. Before anything like that could happen, he was arrested. He was arrested by the Fairmount Park police for driving too slowly. The word was out from the commissioner of the park guard to harass him at every opportunity because a bunch of redneck racists at that time still had attitudes that prevailed in the 50s and 40s.
The reigning heavyweight champion was far more palatable to most Americans. Floyd Patterson was articulate, accessible, and devoid of a criminal past. Everything his title challenger was not.
Floyd Patterson was soft-spoken, a gentleman, and a gentle person. I think all of this worked against Liston. And it is not a popular match. Everybody up to and including President Kennedy is in effect saying, don't fight Sonny Liston because if he wins, he is not a popular or correct standard for the black people. And this got to Sonny Liston. They fight in Chicago, and in 2 minutes and 9 seconds, the bigger Liston has swatted the smaller Patterson to the canvas.
What did God say to you?
He said thanks, and he told the guy on the newsstand if the public would let bygones be bygones, that I would be a good champ, maybe a better champ than he was. He could just as good a champ.
So I'm flying back with Sonny. Then he started talking about what he would say at his press conference at the airport, that he was going to make himself a people's champion, but there wasn't going to be any reception at the airport. Nobody wanted to be in the same photo opportunity with Sonny. The cockpit door opened up, he stepped out, and I could see him look, and there was nothing there, just, maintenance men, ground crews, and so forth. And I could just see, it was almost like him being deflated. I could see his shoulders sag. It was almost like something silent had hit him between the eyes. And he realized that nothing had changed. Right then, he was intuitive enough to know that nothing had changed.
You tell us that your camera, your TV man, your radio man, and you right there in the whole world. If somebody was to look at me, I'll kiss his feet in the rain. I'm out of the rain on my knees. Tell him he's the greatest that gets the next guy out of the country.
Before the first Clay fight, that was probably the worst training period that Sonny had ever put in. By this time, he was disillusioned about the lack of recognition, the lack of acceptance. A lot had seemed to go out of him. He just was no longer a working fighter. And he didn't think he had to be a working fighter for this young punk as he saw him as being. And so in the fight, he was unprepared to go 15 rounds. His tank was rapidly draining, and he told the cut man, Joe Polino, to put an ointment on both gloves. And that's, very much prohibited anywhere near a boxing ring. And the next thing you know, Cassius can't see. I saw Sonny hit him with a left hook to the body, and hit him some thunderous shots. And when Sonny realized that he'd hit him with his best shots, and he was still standing, not only that, but now could see and was coming back, that was the end. When Sonny went back to his corner at the end of that round, he said, "That's it."
Clay had overcome Liston's doctored gloves to seize the title, and the rematch was blighted by even more dubious elements. Rumors of assassination threats against Liston hovered over the most bizarre championship fight in history, replete with questionable officiating and a phantom knockout punch. Liston's first-round tumble effectively ended his big-time boxing career. Sonny continued fighting against cut-rate opponents and began associating with the wrong kinds of friends after settling in Las Vegas. The downward spiral continued, and in December 1970, his wife found him lifeless in their home, with heroin traces coursing through his veins.
Here's a man who was afraid of needles, and they find him dead, with needle marks in his back, which is almost impossible to do. His wife Geraldine had come home, and he'd been there for 5 days dead in his Las Vegas house. And today, Sonny Liston